So I'm here with my good friend Rasheed Ogunlaru, and look at this book cover. Isn't that amazing? You know, I just looked at that and I fell in love with it. This kind of rich brown, and you know, I just love the feel of it.
Yeah, well, I'm colourblind, you know, and people are telling me that this is kind of a deep purple colour.
Yeah.
To me, it kind of looks black. But I love this, the red and the heart, you know, Soul Trader.
Oh, no, like brown to me.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now look, I've known Rasheed on his journey for a while now, and I know, you know, your background is in media and PR.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just say something before I go on the book, just a little bit about your journey from there to here?
Yeah, well, I left school at 18. I had no idea what I wanted to do. Well, I kind of wanted to be a journalist. The first thing I ever wanted to be was an author, by the way, which I only remembered when I wrote that book.
Yeah.
Left school at 18, did my A-levels, didn't go to university. I found myself working for the Rich Stapler magazines and books. I was there for 10 years. That was fantastic because I learned so much about people, about publicity. I used to love, over a period of time, I became responsible for training people to be on TV, radio. I got an opportunity to be
all useful now, right?
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
I got an opportunity to be an organisation spokesperson. I love that, and I love the stuff that had to do with people and developing people. After 10 years I was made redundant. I had to ask myself, what do I want to do? At that point my passion was being a singer and performer. I wanted to be more successful than Seal. It so didn't happen. But I met so many singers who struggled with life balance, confidence and so on, and I was going on a bit of a personal journey. Incidentally, at that time, I also was, because singing's about me, ego, I found myself volunteering for the Samaritans. What I loved about that was that I would come in and leave myself at the door. And there was something about that point where I was beginning to be on a compassionate journey and really understanding to empathise and connect with others. That was a very important point in my journey, just being able to be there. And that combined with a journey that I was almost very rich. And I retrained as a coach to help people take charge of their own lives, singers, performers. But once I trained, I went to work with all sorts of people like me who were running their own business. So I met lots of people running their own business. And so today I'm a coach, life coach. I do stuff with organisations, teams, motivation and so on. Some people in the public eye, some singers and performers, many of them are healers, teachers and leaders.
Yeah.
But actually about 70% of them, strangely to me initially, are people who are starting running their own business. Very often they are a sole trader, it's just them.
Isn't that amazing?
Or they're running a small
Life
business.
sent it to you that way.
Yeah, and I find that kind of surprising, but maybe it's because when you are running your own business, you've got to be all these things. You've got to promote, you've got to be the face of it, you've got to be able to connect with people and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so that's me, that's my story in a nutshell.
I mean, what the people will see immediately is your passion. You know, it's great passion and how articulate you are. It always struck me because we hosted you some years ago with Alternatives.
Yes,
and I remember that evening of very articulate and very conscious and very I was really struck by it that evening.
Thank you.
It was about 4 or 5 years ago now.
Thank you. It's a really funny thing to say, but the funny thing is, as a kid, now some things that are really funny, I always spoke and thinking differently to even the rest of my family. So I'm not intellectual or anything, and I don't actually read that much. When I was a kid, I read.
But you're very articulate.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I think intelligent and wise, really. Now before I embarrass him anymore, I'm gonna ask you, because you showed me very kindly that these 7. How many principles is it?
Yeah, 7 principles, and then there's an additional principle that runs through the book.
Yeah.
Do you want me to tell you about that?
The first one is clarity. Now look, we're talking about soul trader, people who are really starting off their business or in business.
You might be starting, you might be thinking about it. I've always dreamed about blah blah blah, but business is somebody else, or you're thinking, or you're starting up, or in fact you've been in business for a long time, because I coach lots of people who've been in business for a long time but they're stuck in different ways, or that they're wanting to aspire to something else. Okay. So for me it's anybody, anywhere along that journey. I think it will particularly resonate with many people who are starting or that pre-start, but I think there's a lot in it also for people who are in there and they're in some kind of transition, or they need to go in a transition.
So with clarity, you know, let's say somebody's starting out their business. You go, look, I don't know exactly what I want, but I've got a rough idea it's that way. Yeah. What would you say to somebody like that?
First thing, stop, take a step back. Who are you? What's really important to you? What's really, really important to you? Before you even go into business, what is dear to your heart? You know, very often when it comes to business, I should be an accountant, I should be a lawyer, I should be this. What does mum, dad, uncle Bob want? No, first of all, what is it? Who are you? What is it you want? The journey is likely to be challenging. There's going to be all sorts of ups and downs and so on. Generally speaking, you're more likely to have that momentum if you're clear who you are and what's really important to you. You're more likely to, there will be an energy that's going to move you forward and so on. So for me, that clarity is about who you are, but also what you want. And even if you're in business at the moment, where are you now? What's really important to you? There may be a number of different options, but what are you wanting from the business? You know, you might be in a business for a long period of time now, and you might be thinking, actually, you know what? Somebody in that book who came to me he had run a successful business. He was running a new business with some business owners. His confidence and so on had taken a knock, but over a period of time it became clear that he wanted new challenges. He was on a self-development kind of journey. He decided to sell up the business. And so it's about that chapter really gives you that space to step back and ask yourself who you are. And as you said, many people don't know what they're wanting to do. So I take people through some simple tools and techniques just to clarify the ingredients of what's important to them in life, in business and in relationships, because they all interact, in order that they're able to build a business that is based on who they are and what it is that they're wanting to do. And that is really the setup bit of the book, that clarity.
Let me ask you, if somebody's, like you said, somebody's had a business for 20 years and they go, well, I've kind of lost my way a bit, what would you do with someone like that?
I'd sit down with them. I'm not really one for that much technical processes, but for many people I actually, yes, conversation, but I'll often get people, I'll take a piece of paper, divide it into 3 columns, life, this is in the book, life, career, or business, relationships, 3 headings. Write 6 to 10 words of what's most important to them in life, 6 to 10 words of what's most important to them in business, 6 to 10 words of what's most important in relationships. And then we look at in detail what does each word mean to them. Success, they might be measuring it by somebody else's idea of success, a chain of shops and so on, but once they realise, actually for me it's running stores that I'm really passionate about, and we understand what that would look like. So what would that your life look like? What would your career, your business look like? What would your relationships look like? There's a story in that book of a girl who had been a healer for a really long period of time. Her own dreams had taken a back step. She'd also had some health challenges. I got her to do that process, mindful that she hadn't worked for a long period of time. I just said to her, I want you to meditate. What would your life, what would your career, what would your relationships look like if these things were in place? She came back to me 2 weeks later and said, Rasheed, this is what I want to do. So for me,
got it clearly.
She got that. She got that from that clarity. But I think it requires that just giving yourself the space. I mean, what I often say to people at that stage is, look, I know you want to build your business and so on, but this is so important, getting that clarity of who you are and what you want. Because once we know who you are and what you're about and your magic happens. You can grow. It's just your way. It's going to be so much easier. The way that I go about running my coaching business is completely different. The kind of people I might want to coach as a coach is completely different. That's the only way that often you're going to find your unique selling point. People talk about all that all the time. There's going to be a million other accountants, a million other people, a million other coaches, a million other online marketers.
That's so true.
Your magic. And that's what this clarity bit is so important. And that you stay clear, to continue to give yourself time where you stop, you pause. Someone like me, I speak a million to the dozen, but I need the time to stop, reflect, look at my business, where's my business now, because the environment will also be changing. So clarity is important at the beginning and throughout.
That's so good. Now, the second chapter really goes into the outside, the customers. You go from the self. So tell me,
quite right.
Why that jump?
Quite right, because some people say actually you should, when you're going to business, look at things first of all from your customer's perspective. Ultimately that is true, but unless you're clear who you are and what you want to do, that's meaningless. So then once you are clear who I am, this is me, this is why I'm in the world, this is what I'm about, which I know which a lot of your work is about, then it's all about your customers. Who is my customer? How do they see the world? What's really important to them? We can begin to be empathetic, not arrogant. You know, so many businesses over a period of time become arrogant. Once you deeply, and this took me a long time to deeply understand, once you are clear about what you're about, then it's all about your customers. And if you listen to them, if you understand them, understand how they see the world, you will gain business.
What about a new business where they don't quite know the customers yet? Right.
So then there's some processes there that's going to take people to understand that. Where we begin to look at, okay, what are the different scenarios of this particular product? Who might buy this product? You might think, okay, well, I'm making jewellery, and it's just anyone who wants jewellery. But what are those scenarios? It might be somebody who's really passionate about it. It might be somebody who's got a professional job. They always want to have that pizzazz. It might be people who are in the public eye, whatever. They can begin to understand the different types of these customers, and these 3 different types of customers all see the world differently. What they want, what the jewellery means to them is completely different. So people can understand what the service that they're providing means to people. It took me a long time to understand this. I first of all thought that, well, as a coach, anybody's my customer, anybody's wanting to move forward. I suddenly realised that the story for somebody who's been made redundant and is trying to find themselves, the story for somebody who is starting off their business and needs the wherewithal, you know, all their different scenarios are different, or the team and organisation where it's been a restructuring, they need to motivate their staff. There are 3 different stories, and I need to understand completely what's going on in that person's world. Once you do understand what's going on in the world, you can have a conversation that comes up later with them that's compelling and meaningful, and you can begin to make some business, and you can really truly serve them, and also to continue to listen. What we've seen recently is so many businesses that aren't listening to their customers, from banking to so many particular sector, and it happens all the time, you know, where companies stop listening.
Yeah.
Do that at your peril. Even for big businesses, the world can suddenly change. You know, over the last few years, we've seen some big companies go bust, and some big interesting challenges from companies to some banks to places like News. Who would ever think by some things going, and then suddenly everything for a moment could be shaky?
Yeah.
You cannot ignore your customers, and there's a humility for me about that, deeply understanding. And so it's a dance with your customers. You're truly serving your customers, and they get you because you're clear on who you are.
Yeah.
They want to work with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of like branding, isn't it? Because branding is like knowing yourself, and,
Yeah.
then, and then you kind of go
Yeah.
out and know your customers.
And deeply and authentically. Yeah.
Well, courage. Now, courage. Why courage?
Well, you're in this courage chapter.
Yeah.
And
So I am. Yeah.
you really are in this courage. This journey of being a sole trader, whether it is you're starting, whether you're stuck in a job at the moment, you've always dreamed of doing your own thing or running your own online business or teaching or whatever it might well be, any particular business, your own techie business, whatever it might well be, is going to require courage. Or you may well be in business. I coach quite a lot of people because it started off with them. They need to make that jump of hiring the next member of staff. I've got somebody at the moment who's again mentioned in this book. She runs a network for women in business, Afro-Caribbean, Asian women, women of colour in business. She started off because nobody else was doing that, and she had to have the courage to do that. She had little money resources. She just did it. She's got awarded, an MBE for her work, but now the challenge is a new challenge. This business could grow. She's got an online business. It could have sponsorship. It could be this and this. It's going to be a challenge. Does she want to take on staff? Is she ready for running events and all these different things? It's going to be a completely different thing. That's going to require a completely different courage. It's going to require courage. This chapter invites you to first of all go inwardly to find that courage, to again understand who you are and doing things your own way. But also, it taps into a little bit about who those people who inspire you. What's their story? Often that there are clues in that. There's a lovely story in that chapter about a guy lovely guy, he does kind of marketing kind of work, and he picked 3 people, his virtual mentors. He got people to pick virtual mentors. His 3 were the Dalai Lama, Richard Branson, and who was the third one? Richard Branson, the Dalai Lama, and Bob Geldof.
Oh.
Now, what's interesting about his challenge is that this particular guy needed sometimes to, he's so giving, that sometimes he needed to ask for money. So Bob Geldof would just say, give me the money.
Yeah.
So that would help him. What Bob Geldof doing that?
Yeah.
You know, sometimes when he needed to chill out, life balance is important. What would the Dalai Lama say to him? Being peaceful and keeping things in perspective. And in terms of him running an effective business, he would tap into, well, what would Richard Branson say in terms of running that shrewd, sensible business?
That's a great idea. I never thought about that.
So it's interesting. I often get people to do that. People often do all sorts of exercise around who inspires you. For me, you've picked the people who inspire you. So it's actually ultimately about you, because they're either values that you're living by and you could employ more, or they're just beneath the surface and we need to let those things go. There's a wonderful story about Rachel Elner, I think, in that book, who run a successful business. People think when you've run a successful business, that's where the challenges end. They'll have all sorts of ups and downs. She's gone on a journey to find the courage to then do something new.
Yeah.
Doing spiritual work, bringing the spirit back into business, like someone like yourself.
Yeah.
That sometimes, when you've gone that courage journey, then you find your magic.
Yeah.
You find something special. In my own case, I found that there's this whole become who you are thing, this subtler stuff. Now, I was coaching some successful singers, performers. I wanting to coach people in business and corporate. I thought, hang on, it seems to be this kind of subtle, spiritual kind of stuff of just being yourself, being authentic. How's that going to sit with people? But the more I trusted that, that's why people come to me. There's an energetic something that they're drawn to. If I didn't have the courage to do that, even now, where sometimes it may not seem financially or whatever that there's going to be an end result, I've got to just trust. My whole business has always been, everything that's ever happened to me has been based on just trusting, listening.
Yeah.
And I ignore that at my peril.
Yeah.
And it's always led, first of all, something that's nourishing to me,
Yeah.
and I've been able to sustain myself from that. So I think that chapter of courage is extremely
It's an important chapter.
Yeah.
Cooperation is the next chapter. Everything is interrelated, interdependent, and ultimately one. You need help, support, suppliers, staff, contacts to run, grow your business, sales, profits, etc. Tell me about that.
Yeah. Now, whether you are thinking about running a business or you're in business at the moment, if you're thinking about running a business, for many people have often felt, no, I don't know how to start, how am I going to begin? So actually by cooperating might be, who do you know is already in business? Having conversation with somebody might be able to help you, first of all, to set up your business. When I first started, a friend of mine helped me set up my website and made my first business cards. I asked somebody else to do how to run it. So there's always going to be cooperation. Cooperation might be the way in which you can start your business. Business is a multidisciplinary thing. Nobody knows everything about business. I'm learning so much about business even now. So by cooperating, for somebody who doesn't know anything about business, if you do cooperate, that will help you. Maybe then you've had the wherewithal to start, then maybe you're trying to find your customers. Let's say I'm a massage therapist. I know somebody down the road, they're a gym instructor. This person over there does hair, blah, blah. All these different people we can be helping, we can be supporting each other, directing each other to each other's business. Cooperation is powerful. When you realise that we are interrelated, everybody's in transition, everybody needs something. So it's looking at how can you cooperate. If you've got a business, how is it with your staff, how is it you're actually working as a unit? How is it you can actually value them and so on? So there's lots of stuff there about helping people also be creative about that.
It's also a lonely journey, right? Because it says soul, I mean, I know you say soul trader, but the idea of working on your own can be lonely. With support and connection and networking. Because you hear it all the time. You know, I'm a bit, you know, I feel unsupported, or I don't feel I see anyone. I know somebody who works at home and she's on the phone, but she doesn't really see anyone all day long. It's about, isn't it about connection?
Quite right. And that cooperation also looks at, you know, there's this thing about you might be successful work, but and you're running this big business, but if you haven't had that conversation with your partner, they're not going to pick up the kids from school and the whole thing's falling down. Where you there?
We need people. Conversations next, which is, you know, I guess this really ties in well. You know, I think conversations lost art. Don't you think? I mean, you haven't lost it. Hopefully, I'm regaining it. But you know, why conversations?
Because once you are clear from these earlier chapters, then actually your business is actually about converting customers into business. This saying came to me a year or two ago, that customer conversion is dependent on the right customer conversation. Customer conversion is dependent on the right conversation. Everything is a conversation. What's your website saying? What's your business card saying? What's the cover of one's book saying? What are you saying when you're meeting people? Are you even telling the people who you're nearest to? So I've gone from having been a banker to setting up my own events business. Am I telling those people? Am I not? So much of your business is going to come from those conversations. What am I telling them? Am I having the conversations at all? How can you have a conversation from a compelling, powerful
And selling
space?
happens through conversation. I mean, I do remember that I bought something from a salesman because I saw he's so passionate about it, and also saw it as a benefit. I think there was a Federation of Small Businesses. He sold me within the first 10 minutes just because he was passionate about it.
And the thing is, there's a lovely story, for example, in that conversation. I met this guy, wonderful. He works in the accountancy field. Works with some high-end people. I really like this person, the warmth of spirit and generosity. For his business, every client is worth thousands and thousands of pounds because they're high-end. He was quite shy. He doesn't go out and do much networking. He told me that he gets lots of invites for really nice dues. He only goes to a handful of them. I said, well, I'd really love for you to go for some more. If he was to go out and just trust to go out and have the conversations, he'd be winning thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds worth of money. So if somebody's actually having those conversations, it's worth a lot for their business if one can truly have them. Very often we feel as though, take somebody's website. First thing I ever go to is the About Us page, but so often there's nothing about that person. I want to know about you. Who are you? What are you about? So you can have that conversation that is so authentic that people want Steve Nobel. Because Steve Nobel so resonates, he understands me. In this age of video and so on, people can think and do that kind of stuff. So it's really exploring that. Also, some people do have difficulty with certain difficult conversations. So I put some scenarios of how, some scenarios and tools of sample conversations, and then I put some practical tools in there in that conversation structure as well.
Well, look, creativity. You know, does every business have to be creative?
Well, I think there's two sides to this, because there's two kind of audience I wrote this book for. The people who are teachers, the people who are, maybe they are creatives, maybe they're therapists, maybe they're people related to people. These people often feel as though business isn't for them. So what the book is about, how they can use those skills, their creativity, to build their business. So for example, I used to be a singer and performer. I'm really amazed at how people who are singers, performers and creatives don't pour that same creativity to build their business. I met a lady before, she was an actress and so on. But when she was then meeting people, she didn't use that magic that she could do to really engage and so on, because then she'd think, oh, I need to be like this.
Yeah, yeah.
If you can use your creativity, you can build a business that is very creative. So, for example, with my first book, The Gift of Inner Success, I was a singer and performer, so for me, recording it, going in to record it, is the best way for me. So I was creative, recorded it, transcribed it, as opposed to necessarily writing it. But then you've got the other side of people who are quite traditionally minded, logical minded and so on. Could they bring in a little bit more creativity? And for me that creativity might begin with actually what makes you creative. For lots of people who'll be starting with this, do they actually have time in nature where they are, a couple of people whereby the thing that will have the biggest impact on their business is for them going for that run first thing in the morning, taking that time up, going for a walk, rearranging the office so it's a way that's inspiring to them, bringing a piece of artwork that really inspires them. That's really good. So that creativity is different formats. I've also put in there, for me it's about the right blend between framework and creativity. So I've actually put a 2-page business plan template in there, and some other bits and pieces of tools. Because some people who are creative, they're so busy being creative that there's no structure to it. Yeah. So it's about knowing how to manage your creativity as well. And it's wonderful speaking to you. I've realised how much is in the book. Yeah. I kind of think, oh, there's just these 7 themes sometimes. I realise that actually there's quite a lot of depth within each. You
could probably spend 2 or 3 hours talking about it. Right?
Probably could.
Well, one of the things on creativity that I've read was that a lot of non-creative jobs, so-called non-creative jobs or businesses are being outsourced. Whereas the creative ones aren't, because you can't outsource creativity so easily. What about compassion?
Now we're talking. For me, that is the heart of the book. Love is the only thing that's going to work in every situation.
Yeah.
Sometimes the journey that you're on
is a radical message, right?
Yeah. Sometimes the journey you're going to be on is going to require courage. But I think that courage and compassion are 2 sides of the same coin. Sometimes it's going to require the compassion. Are you kind enough to yourself to give yourself that time out, to take that step back? When I was writing this book, one of the entrepreneurs I was working with, successful entrepreneur, lovely guy, he runs a tea business. He's really passionate about helping people from Nepal. His teas are from Nepal. That's quite, I think there's kind of challenges with Nepal. Beautiful country at the top of the earth. He wants to do all these things socially to help these people. When I rang him to tell him that he was in this book, he'd just come out of hospital because he'd had a heart scare. He's busy doing all this kind of work. He knows all sorts of amazing people. But without that time, that compassion to take care of him and take care of his heart, interestingly, the heart's going to, in some way, stop you.
Yeah.
Or your heart's not going to be in it. Yeah. This whole book is, if your heart's not in it, why are you?
Yeah.
It's a bit like your book. If your heart's not in it, why are you? And your heart's going to give out somewhere, or it's going to be meaningless. When one has heart, magic happens. When one has heart, your clients know that you care about them. Yeah. They're not going to, in a recession like this, you're going to be the last business that people are going to stop wanting. Yeah. It's magical for you, your staff, for everybody else. Compassion is everything. Yeah. For me, ultimately, that book is about heart. It's bringing the heart back into business. I'm so passionate about that. It's about heart stuff. When one operates from heart, I can't begin to tell you what happens. It's just extraordinary.
Also, your staff get treated differently, don't they? I mean, I've gone into some businesses that on the surface look very inspirational, very holistic, but I often say to the staff, how is it working here? And they'll go, it's okay. And then well, okay, right. the facade doesn't actually, and you can feel it.
That's right. And when you can have that dialogue, when you really can connect with people at heart, even though the situation might be difficult, you have to shed half of your staff or what have you, because you're coming from that authentic space, everybody's cool, and everybody will try their best. Yeah. Everybody will cooperate. So transformation can happen in a moment. Transformation is not something that happens over a period of time. The impact of it, the dust settling happens over time, but transformation happens in the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. But the last chapter is change, which is kind of an interesting one. As I said to you before we did this interview, you could easily have put that at the beginning because the whole landscape of business is constantly changing. But what about change?
It's the thread throughout the book. Throughout the books, there's 7 themes, and this is like the additional one. Yeah. It's the ace in the pack. You'll change, your life will change, circumstances will change, what you want will change, your customers will change. You might think one thing, my business, one period of time, as a coach and so on, the public sector was in disarray. There was people calling me, and then the business sector. I've had to constantly judge my business and what you want. So it's being aware of that, and lots of people are afraid of change. The chapter's about the fact that we're dualistic to start change. We want change on the one hand. We want more money. We want more clients. We want certain things to change, the economy to pick up, or things to slow down, so we can do this. And on the other hand, we're afraid of change. So this chapter is just making us aware and accepting and embracing of change, and to be aware and alert so that we're more in tune. We're more in tune with our environment. We're more in tune with life. And what's the change that we want to see? How can we embody that change?
Yeah.
You know, how's that we can embody that change? How can we be that? How can we operate from that space, from the heart? And so there's quite a lot of stuff around kind of leadership that's implied throughout there. And there's a couple of people I talk about there, and they're chief executives, and they're running businesses from the heart. And there's one of them, a wonderful guy. He asked me to coach him on leadership. He was going into an organisation for the first time. First of all, we need to be clear. We need to allow him to be himself. Now the way he runs that organisation is different to his peers. He's creative. He's compassionate. This guy is a magical human being. He's going to do wonderful things in the world, and that's what we need.
Yeah.
So when you can connect, and then you can have that space which magic can happen, we can have those leaders who are going to be able to steer people from that. On that note, tomorrow's leaders aren't going to be the ones who are leading from the front, or taking from the right front, or pushing from the back. They're going to be leading from the heart, from the centre, from the heart. Yeah. So that change thing is just that flow throughout the book.
Now, Soul Trader, what's the website for where people can find you for this book?
People can come to my website, which is www.rasaru.com, R-A-S-A-R-U. But it's on Kogan Page. If you want to look up Kogan Page, koganpage.com, www.koganpage, K-O-G-A-N, page.com. The book's on there. It's available from Amazon, good bookshops from October, but you can pre-order it now from October 2012.
Isn't that lovely? That heart in there says it all.
Well, thank you.
Rasheed,
I want to thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I want a copy of this book.
You're definitely going to get a copy. Thank you so much.